Well, hello and welcome to The Wine List, which is a podcast for people who like wine, like tasting wine, think it's a bit of a complex and complicated and intimidating subject, but think, hell, I want to know more about it anyway. My name is Oliver Turnbull and I'm playing the part of someone who likes wine and wants to know more about it. And my friend of many decades, Mr. Richard Lane, is the expert who's going to take us through the subject. Richard, how are you?
Very well, Oliver. Thank you very much. Here we are, episode 7. And this ep is going to be a major exploration of our senses of smell and taste, okay?
Episode 7, can you believe it already? Aromas and flavours and tasting, and you have selected 4 wines, and I'm assuming maybe for their differentiation, but good examples of wines for a sort of beginner like me. Maybe I'm borderline intermediate, but let's call me a beginner. You had the idea that we should probably have a bit of a sniff early doors, right?
First of all, let me introduce the wines, and we've got 2 whites and 2 reds. Starting off, wine number 1, we're in Italy, and we're going to be tasting a Pecorino d'Abruzzo. This is a lovely white wine from central Italy. It's the Wine Society's own, and it's 2020, so lovely and young. The second wine, also a white wine, is a really fragrant wine from Argentina. It's called Torrentes. I think we're going to have fun sniffing and tasting this one all. Wine number 3, we're in America. We've been not deliberately ignoring America, but we are definitely in America this evening because we're tasting a Parker Station Pinot Noir from Santa Barbara, 2018. And wine number 4, a 2015 Rioja Reserva. I'm really excited about that. The point is, these wines are all very different, and I think they're going to give us great opportunities to explore our noses and our noses' ability to detect aromas and our tongues to taste, and for you to broaden your expanding canvas in the wine world, which I have to say is going brilliantly in this series.
I feel my confidence growing, but it's much more important than that. I feel my enjoyment growing. I can appreciate better, and it's almost as if my taste buds and nose buds, more of the science later, are slightly getting more attuned, and it's just simply fun, and these things taste gorgeous. And the way you describe them makes me really want to dive in. So 4 wines from 3 continents and 4 countries.
Lovely, lovely. And you're going to love this because we're actually going to get a bit of objectivity into this. We're not just going to taste them and say, do we like them? Yeah, we're almost in spreadsheet territory here also. You're going to enjoy this episode. So a couple of things to mention. The internationally acclaimed provider of wine education, WSET, Wine and Spirit Education Trust, the body that has given me all my exams, my diploma and my teaching qualifications, they use something called the SAT, Systematic Approach to Tasting, and they have given us permission to use their level 2, because they have different levels of wine education, their level 2 systematic approach to tasting. That's going to be our guide of the 4 wines. And I think we should just have a very quick sniff. You've got them all poured, I know you have. No tongues, as it were, just noses. Any thoughts on the 4 wines?
That's a principle to live by on any night out. Smells nice. I'll just rotate it round the glass in the way that I'm getting better and better at. Okay, so nothing that jumps out. Smells perfectly pleasant. I'm going to need to have a taste a bit later on, I think, to bring out any subtleties on that one.
Okay.
But very, very pleasant.
Wine number 2, just on the nose.
Ooh, there's a bit more going on there. I'm going to say earthy, but that's all I'm going to say.
Number 3, the Pinot Noir.
As featured heavily in Sideways, one of our favourite movies. Right, there's something there, which by the time I taste it a little bit later on, I'll know what it is.
Okay.
There's just a distinct smell of something, and it's really nice.
Number 4, the Rioja Reserva, 2015.
Ooh, totally different again, and there is something in there.
Ah, yeah.
Oh, there is something again. It's a smell of something. I haven't got the adjective, but it's very, very different from the Pinot Noir. Both are nice, but just in their different ways. So I think you've passed the first test, Rich, in terms of having wines from geographically dispersed nature, but also I think there are going to be comments that we can make that differentiate them on flavour as well.
And because we're focusing on taste, aromas and taste, we're going to talk a bit about biology, but you've already neatly said in your intro, Ol, this is about you not doing a wine course and taking a wine exam. As you know, this is not what this podcast is about. This is about you getting more relaxed about wine because you're finding out a bit more about it in a really relaxed kind of easygoing way like this discussion. and enjoying it. And enjoyment with wine is so important. And of course, enjoyment just obviously isn't just physically the aromas and flavours we taste. It's the conversations, the context that, of course, we have the wine in. The general point I want to make here is this is all about joining up senses. So yes, it might be your views on the appearance of the wine, very much on the nose, the aromas of the wine, the taste when we get round to the tasting later on. It's all about a sensory experience. It's all about good vibes, good vibrations.
Good Lord. And it's a fantastic idea to call it good vibrations, because I believe this might be an opportunity for you to get the old fiddle out.
Oh, blimey, so it is. I nearly forgot the old fiddle. Excellent. Right. I'll just do some work on that.
Well, before we just go into the tasting, I mean, one of the things that's really pleasing about this and how I'm sort of getting into it, it's not just a confidence thing, although that comes with it. It's just the interest, really. Fascinating subject is. Actually, before we go into tasting, I think it will be rather remiss for us not to mention a story that you talked to me about when we last spoke in the week, about when you, as a student of wine, you actually lost your taste recently.
I did. This was March last year, 2020. I didn't get tested at the time or a diagnosis, but I'm assuming it was COVID, because my sense of smell and taste didn't totally disappear. It wasn't I got nothing, but everything I tasted sort of like weird cardboard. For example, I got out a Greek white wine called Asiatico, which is quite a complex, lovely white wine. Had a sip, I thought, oh, golly, that's awful. It's off, or it's corked or something. It was just not good. Bit cross, because I was really looking forward to tasting it. So I thought, cheer myself up. Oh, good. Well, I've got a nice cab from California. Let's have that instead. You couldn't get more different from a Greek white than a Californian cab. Opened it up, had a sip. Guess what? Tasted exactly the same. My taste buds are gone. And I thought, oh, crikey. And I've got my final exams coming up for my WSET diploma. But the pandemic obviously was affecting people, not just myself, my taste buds, others much more seriously. And the exams were postponed. And by the time they were rescheduled, the final exams, which included a whole day of blinking blind tasting, nightmare, my sense of smell and taste had returned. And happily I got through the exams. And here we are.
Well, let's get into it. I know there's some biology, which I also find interesting. Let's get into the biology of the link between smell and taste. I think most people realise that smell and taste are inextricably linked, but I'm not sure that people have quite the understanding about how important the sense of smell is.
That's right. It's very easy to think, obviously, that the real enjoyment, obviously, comes from tasting the wine. But the sense of smell is incredibly important. The simplest way to imagine this is, everyone's experienced this. When they've had a heavy cold and their nose is blocked and their sinuses are blocked, you get less pleasure from food and flavours in food when you've got a cold, because you can't taste properly because your nose is bunged up. And that is because the tongue, with its 5 main senses on the tongue, sweetness, saltiness, sour, savoury and bitterness, they do a basic job. The subtleties come from our ability to smell. Whilst you've got those 5 basic sense areas of the tongue, when it comes to smell, we've got millions of receptors in our upper nasal cavity, our sort of sinus area, and they all feed up into something called the olfactory bulb, lovely term, olfactory bulb, in the brain, which does the processing and starts trying to make sense of all the incredible subtle detections of aromas and flavours that are coming up as a result of the combined action of tasting and smelling. And when I taste wine at professional wine tastings or whatever, I will take a tiny sip in my mouth, and I will then sort of breathe in and without swallowing the wine, so I can actually get some aeration going through my mouth into my nasal cavity to help me understand the wine better. It's the nose that's doing most of the work. So, I think this is a good moment to introduce the systematic approach to tasting wine, the SAT. What do you think of it?
I absolutely love it. As you predicted, you know me too well. It was like, all this is very complex and very nice and very much fun, but let me get down to characterizations and categorizations, please. And you said, okay, this WSET Level 2 systematic approach to wine, the SAT, is marvellous. It also sort of gives you a little bit of an index of things to look for. So it breaks things down by appearance, colour, the nose, the palate, the acidity, the finish, the body, the alcohol content, the tannin, etc. for red wines. Actually, stuff you've taught me already, but it has it all categorised and tells you what to look for. And yes, ultimately very spreadsheetable. And then it talks about the primary, secondary and tertiary, which I'm very interested in, both to experience and what makes something primary, secondary and tertiary. And would you believe it, within primary, secondary and tertiary, the possible flavours are categorised. So it sort of gives you an idea of things that might jump into your mind when you smell these things. So it's really going to help me, I think, describe the wine in about as an objective way as you can get, because of course we've talked a lot about subjectivity and what might go with what and what certain people particularly like and whether a wine's good for a picnic or a dinner. But this attempt does a very good job of it, of applying some objectivity to this. And of course, like any taxonomy, I'm very keen on it. And let's use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we should just explain to listeners who are thinking, what are they talking about? WSET, SAT level 2. We will put details on the website and where you can get the SAT from. It is copyrighted. It is WSET's intellectual property, but you'll be able to get it from them. We'll put details up on the website. The main things we're talking about, other than appearance, which Ol can just cover very quickly, we're talking about using the nose and the tongue to assess each wine that we're tasting, the 4 wines tonight, in these 3 categories: primary, secondary and tertiary. And very simply, primary relates to the aromas and flavours of viticulture, of the grapes themselves. So it might be something as simple as the fruit profile of the grapes. And if that's white grapes in a white wine, we might be talking about things that we've already discussed with Chablis and all the other wines we've tasted in this series so far. Things like perhaps citrus fruit, green fruit like apple, or maybe peach, stone fruit, those sorts of things. If we were talking about a red wine, we'd be probably just saying, is it more red fruit than black fruit? Is it more sort of strawberry, raspberry than blackcurrant and, blueberry, that sort of thing? Then when it comes to secondary, and not all wines have primary, secondary and tertiary. Part of the fun of this is when you start analysing wine is to say, right, okay, has it got primary? Secondary relates to aromas and flavours that are a result of winemaking, i.e. after the fermentation's happened in the winery, there may be some flavours that we can detect that relate to decisions made by the winemaker. That might relate to things like oak, for example. We've talked about oak quite a bit in the last ep. So primary sort of viticulture, secondary kind of winemaking, and tertiary, these are more rare. Tertiary relates to evolution of aromas and flavours once the winemaking has taken place. So this might be flavours that evolve in the bottle. Some of the most prized wines in the world, as we've discussed, they're not ready for drinking when they're young. They have to develop. They need time, either in a maturation process in oak, for example, before they're bottled, or they can even develop flavours once they've been bottled. And that might be things like fruit that was primary and fresh has become dried fruit. It might be things like earth or mushroom or some of these quite complex aromas and flavours. It might be sort of almost like a leathery or savouriness that you get. These are sort of tertiary flavours that we might be looking for. We're not going to get them in all the wines. Let's see whether we get them in any of the wines tonight, but I'm hoping we'll certainly have a bit of primary, secondary and tertiary across the 4 wines.
It's funny with this tasting lark, it's a little bit like I used to do improvisation just for fun, and it really is fun, but you've sort of got to dive in and give yourself license to say what the first thing's on your mind. No one's going to judge you. And it's a little bit like that with tasting. Fruit and sweet is pretty obvious. But when you're sort of talking things like wet dog leather, the inside of a pair of marigold gloves, that kind of thing, you can sometimes feel embarrassed. But I mean, you're very good at sort of guiding me through and giving me the license, if you like, to say, the first thing that comes into my head and sort of build on that. And without sort of leading the witness, you get out of me what I'm trying to say, because we've mentioned this a lot, that difficulty you have in describing a taste in the same way that you have difficulty in describing a piece of music sometimes, because it doesn't really lend itself to our vocabulary. No, this will definitely help.
Brilliant. And just to add that the inside of a pair of marigold gloves is not on the WSET, in the WSET SAT lexicon. That's in the Oliver Turnbull lexicon. But also to make the point that the lexicon of the SAT is not exhaustive, and it's just there as a guide. And if you think of something else is a better descriptor, you would use it, and that's fine.
What's next? Actually tasting?
Let's look at the wines. Wine number 1, our Pecorino d'Abruzzo 2020 Wine Society. It's around £11. So, you've got the SAT there. Spend no more than a second on the appearance. I'm guessing it's pale lemon.
It is very pale. Yeah. But yeah, pale lemon indeed.
What are you getting on the nose?
I fancy I'm getting citrus fruit, but I am not absolutely sold on that just yet.
Okay. I am getting a bit of that too. And I'm also getting something a little bit herbal. Makes me think of herbs. I don't know, maybe fennel or something, or dried herbs. something like that. Do you think the wine is hopping out of the glass? So do you think it's pronounced in terms of its aromas, or do you think it's sort of very quiet, or do you think it's somewhere in the middle?
I would say medium to quiet, because some of the wines that we've tasted kind of burst out the glass as soon as you start doing the swirly thing, and this one didn't quite.
I would agree with that. So again, this is us assessing whether the wine's aromas are light, medium or pronounced, and I would go medium. Absolutely.
Okay.
So that's a good little start, though. So we're following the SAT. You've described the appearance. It's medium intensity in terms of its nose. We've suggested that we're in the primary territory of maybe citrus fruit. I think maybe there's a bit of green fruit as well, maybe a bit of apple and some herbs we've mentioned. Let's taste it. Just a little sip, give it a good swirl. Try and breathe in as you're tasting. So to get those aromas going up into your olfactory bulb.
Oh, wait a minute. There's apple going on. I'm pretty convinced.
Kind of nice ripe apple. How do you find the acidity here? Dribbleometer, please.
Yeah, there's dribble going on. There's acid here.
Is the wine dry or sweet, or somewhere in between?
Fairly dry, but not insanely dry.
Yeah. With the palate, the wine is dry. The wine has a quite high acidity, actually. I think we could actually say high. I had quite a big dribble.
I did too.
I think there's high acidity here. The alcohol is something we assess. And the way you assess alcohol really is, if you're getting a bit of a burn at the back of your mouth, that means the alcohol is high. If the wine is quite light-bodied and you're not really noticing much weight or sense of alcohol, then it's low. And the chances are it's probably in the middle. What do you think?
I will say there's something in there going on, for sure, alcohol-wise. I drank a lot of beer in the past and can tell, quite easily whether something is around the 4 or around the 5, and I'd say that is not mad high, but there's alcohol there for sure. So medium to high.
Yeah, medium alcohol. And looking at the details, alcohol 13%. High alcohol would be 14% or above. Low alcohol would be 11% alcohol or below. Most wines are in between and are medium. Very good. What about the body? This is a more difficult thing to assess, but it's this thing I've been alluding to in previous EPs. It's the weight of the wine in your mouth. And obviously, the more experience you have, the easier it is to do. If you had water in your mouth, it would be so thin, wouldn't it? Water doesn't have much weight. Of course, it's water.
Yeah.
So compared to a sip of water, which would obviously be light.
Whereas a cup of Bovril would be...
Yeah, could be full-bodied, absolutely. So it's about trying to assess the kind of, you're a physicist, Ol. You remember surface tension, I suppose. We're talking about the viscosity and the surface tension of the fluid in your mouth.
Ooh, tricky. That is tricky. Blimey. I don't feel qualified, but damn it, I'm going to have a go. One more sip. I'm getting confused now because this is a white wine, right?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that red wines by their nature have more body, or am I...
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. No. I want to say, for a white wine, this has plenty of body.
It's medium-bodied. I'd say it's on the sort of slightly medium-plus side of medium-bodied. It's not full-bodied. And if we were drinking a really chunky, well, maybe we'll find out when we taste one of the other wines this evening.
Tease.
Then with the SAT, we then talk about the flavour intensity. And this is where you should be hopefully finding some parallel, some correlation between what you are detecting on your nose with what's going on with your tongue. They don't have to be in sync, but they usually are. We said this wine had medium intensity on the nose and that we picked up primary aromas on the nose of citrus and green fruit and herbs. And on the palate, do you think this wine is, wow, it's got so much intense flavour? Do you think, golly, it hasn't got much going on at all, it's very light, or is it somewhere in the middle?
Right, definitely not wow. And by the way, before we go on, the biggest wow we've had was a red that we tasted a while ago. And I have, up until this point, assumed that generally speaking, the big wows were in the reds. And I'm starting to think I might be erroneous in that assumption, and that I should forget that it's a white or a red, and I should classify it just as a wine.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, fine.
It's human nature. We have presuppositions, we have prejudices, and we like to take shortcuts. It helps us make decisions. But no, you're absolutely right. White wines can be full-bodied and absolutely explosive in flavour. I mean, take Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc, for example. It's pretty full-on.
Yeah, it was. You're right.
Yeah?
You're right. It absolutely was. By the way, I'm loving the way that you're overlapping a bit of psychology into this. So quite a few of the sciences are covered. A bit of biology, a bit of psychology, a bit of physics. Lovely.
It's great, isn't it? And this is all these, it's all these intersections of disciplines.
Yeah, that's what it is.
This is why wine just grabs me by the throat and shakes me, because it's, as again I've mentioned in previous episodes, geography, meteorology, soil biology, microbiology, biochemistry, marketing, PR, physics. Oh my God, it's the whole lot.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's the whole blinking lot.
just in this delicious liquid.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm glad we started on this journey. So that, look, I'm going to say it does not leap out the glass at me because it doesn't leap out the glass like others.
We're just describing the character of this wine, and very much that the palate, the intensity of the flavours on the palate of the Pecorino absolutely mirror what we picked up on the nose, i.e. medium intensity, quite straightforward, citrus, definitely some lemon, some grapefruit, apple we picked up, pear would be great too. I don't think we're even going into riper fruit, because in primary with white wines you can start going into stone fruit, peach and apricot, even through to tropical, banana, lychee, mango for really, really ripe fruit. I don't think ripe fruit sort of flavours. I think this is still very much delicious, but in the sort of citrus and green fruit territory. Would you agree?
I would, and also I'm very interested in what you say about ripe fruit territory. If we're going into ripe fruit territory, as you call it, so up the fruit tree, no pun intended, does that mean generally more taste, more sophistication, or is it just different? Is it a matter of taste?
It's different, and not all grape varieties can do it, because grape varieties differ. But you do have some grape varieties, particularly ones that can be many faces to many situations. Chardonnay, we mentioned last time, being a good example. When Chardonnay is cool climate and when the ripening opportunities are a bit more limited, Chardonnay will be citrus and green fruit, generally, like Chablis, the basic Chablis. When Chardonnay gets a bit warmer, so further south in Burgundy, you can start getting slightly riper fruit flavours from the Chardonnay, and you'd probably be in the peach, apricot, nectarine territory. When you ripen Chardonnay in a very warm climate, examples would be parts of Australia, warmer parts of California, for example, there will be others. Chardonnay can take on aroma and flavour characteristics of banana, mango, pineapple, really ripe fruit. So it's almost like a spectrum. If you picture in an axis of kind of cool climate flavours on the left and warm climate flavours on the right, and Chardonnay's moving through the gears. Not all grape varieties can do that. That can be a helpful way of looking at it, because some grape varieties can taste different depending on how ripe they are.
Two immediate questions. One is that one of the things that makes Chardonnay popular? It's almost you're almost saying it's like a versatile grape.
Yeah.
That's one question. And then secondarily, when you're picking a Chardonnay, if you're someone who quite likes the tropical end, you will clearly look to see where the Chardonnays come from and say, actually, I think I'll go for the Australian Chardonnay over the Argentinian, because you've got a feeling that will give you a different flavour that you find pleasant. So we're now getting into the territory of picking out wines on a wine list by their grape and also by their location.
That's right. Oh, but I've got bad news for you though.
If you say it's more complicated than that, I really will go mad.
It's more complicated than that.
That's fine. No problem.
Because it's so much down to the choice of the people producing the wine as to the style of the wine they want to produce. So what has been a reaction to the anything but Chardonnay movement that we discussed earlier on in the series? Loads of winemakers in Australia, they'll say, well, that's fine. My climate's warm, but you know what? I want to make a cool expression of Chardonnay. So they'll pick their grapes a little bit earlier. And in the winemaking as well, there are tricks you can do to keep acidity high, whether you're going to stir the dead yeast cells in to make it creamy or not. These can all affect the style of the wine. So it would be lovely and simple to say, this Chardonnay is from Australia, therefore it is going to taste just like this, because you will be disappointed. You may be lucky, but you may be, chances are you'll be unlucky. How do you find the length of wine number one, the Pecorino?
Not great, not nearly as great as some of the wines you've tasted. By great, I mean long.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think it's just about a medium finish, no more than that. There you go, Ol. You've described, using the WSET SAT for level 2, level of wine education, you've described this wine. We're going to go on and taste the second wine. Wine number 2, Ol.
I'll do the very quick look test. It's slightly less pale.
Let's go to the nose.
Oh, there is something there, something inside so strong, to quote Labby Sifri, but I can't quite yet put my finger on it. So I'm looking at my L2 SAT to give me some inspiration.
Primary, secondary, tertiary. Are we smelling, detecting aromas of the grape variety? Are we getting any aromas from winemaking? Oak being the obvious thing, vanilla, smoke, cloves, that sort of thing. If it's seen oak, this wine. This is a 2019, so I think we can discount tertiary straight away. Let's just focus on the primary again, Ol. How does the SAT guide us when we're looking at primary for a white wine? Most young wines will have a fruit profile of some kind, even if it's limited. Just think of fruit.
So difficult. So difficult. I feel like I'm failing you,
No,
Richard.
no, not at all. What about the intensity? Do you think is it hopping out of the glass?
More than the other. I haven't tasted it yet, but I have smelt it. Should I be tasting it now?
Let's have a little taste. And it is, on the nose, there is more here than the Pecorino. Absolutely. I think it would be not quite pronounced, but on the way between medium and pronounced. Not very helpful. But anyway, I think the best thing to do is taste it, and we'll maybe look at the nose again when we're tasting. Because remember, tasting and nosing, it's all part of the same gig. Right. Looking at the SAT, first question is the wine dry or sweet or somewhere in between? Does the wine leave your palate dry or with any detectable sweetness?
Dry. I can't get much fruit, and I'm very cross with myself, but I'm starting to get less cross with myself because it's not all about that. But I am getting something spicy or herbaceous.
There is some nice herbaceousness, a little bit of grassiness, a little bit of
a
bit of fennel, maybe a little bit of blossom or something, or honeysuckle. I think there's quite a lot of floral and herbal going on here. The main fruit I picked up more on the palate than I have to say on the nose. There's one fruit I think is quite strong on this wine, and don't beat yourself up that you didn't pick it up, and that is grapefruit.
Okay.
There's a bit of grapefruit and peach going on. This is all within the primary fruit descriptors provided by the SAT. Sometimes a good thing, particularly with white wines, all wines actually, even if you don't know what is in there, you can just ask yourself the question, is this wine aromatic or not? If it's aromatic, it means that aromas and flavours will be pretty obvious, and you'll be thinking, oh, hello, I'm getting something here. But quite often, this is the tough bit about wine assessment. Sometimes they're quite neutral, and it's quite hard to say what's going on. They're definitely non-aromatic. This wine, this Torontes from Argentina, it's pretty aromatic. It's slightly less acidity than the Pecorino. I'd say medium acidity is fine here. Alcohol and body.
It seems very similar to the last one.
Spot on. It's medium alcohol, 13%, same as the Pecorino. I'd say similar body, actually, to the Pecorino.
I'm frustrated at not being able to get the fruit. I'm trying to see grapefruit, and I think I can, but I just think it's because I'm trying too hard. There seems to be some sourness in there, but maybe I'm just cross with this wine because it isn't fruity enough.
There are some sour herbs in wine number 2. Sour is one of the tongue's main receptors. There's something slight bitter, sort of herbal thing that goes a bit bitter towards the end. It's slightly harder work, wine number 2 than wine number 1, I would say. If you go back to wine number 1, or if you've got some of wine number 1.
What a great expression. It's a bit hard work. This is where, again, it comes into like describing musical passages. Some of these things really, really work as descriptors. I know what you mean. Hard work. Yeah.
Just a little bit kind of, it's not the friendliest of wines. It's kind of saying, yeah, you can taste me if you really want to, but I'm not totally pleased that you're tasting me. I'm going to give you a slight hard time here.
Like cats versus dogs. So this is a cat type wine. The other was a dog, which is drink me, I'm great. God, good to see you. Yeah, get a little hit from me. I just retasted the Pecorino, and it felt, I'm going to say less harsh. It just felt more friendly. It just felt more smooth. It's a Labrador puppy to the Torontes aloof cat.
I don't think one is, and this is not about whether we like the wine more or not, or we've just said we do, but when it comes to assessing the wine, coming back to objectivity, so on the palate, we've said it's dry, the Torontes wine number 2, dry with medium acidity, medium body, medium alcohol, medium flavour intensity, I would suggest. Again, mainly the grapefruit, the peach, the herbs, the slightly bitter herbs. And the finish?
So the finish was quite long, and there was a difference to it. A slight bitterness to it, maybe.
Yes. The bitterness that we picked up was in the finish. Yes, exactly. I think it's a medium finish. So actually, wines number 1 and 2, in terms of how we've assessed them, the point is the profile of wines number 1 and 2, okay, we've come up with different descriptors, but actually if you look at their acidity, their dryness, their body, their length, actually they're quite similar, even though they're 2 quite different wines. Okay, Red's time and Pinot Noir time. Quick word about Sideways. Are you Miles or are you Jack?
Oh, what a great question. So what I like about Miles, I'm Miles basically, because he's cynical, he's world weary, he's unsuccessful, and like a lot of unsuccessful creative people, he feels he should be successful. He's unnecessarily angry and grumpy. And although I'm not like that, I really like that kind of character. I do like those characters who are unhappy, borderline unpleasant, but they have a big heart. Whereas his mate is a lot more jolly, but actually Does he have a big heart, or is he incredibly shallow? So I'd like to think I'm Miles. What about you?
Yeah, well, ditto. I mean, Jack is, I can't remember the actor's name who plays Jack, but he's
bloody good.
He's really, really good, because Jack is the kind of once famous actor, isn't he, who's now just doing voiceovers.
That's right.
And part of the plot of the film is the waitress recognises him from the series that he was famous in a decade ago, and that sort of all gets exciting for them, doesn't it? I'd rather be Miles than Jack. Funny film. Just a quick key point on what it did to the wine world. It's all set in...
Oh, this is fascinating. Yeah, and a bit frightening.
It's all set in the Santa Ynez Valley, which is sort of central coast part of California, so north of LA, but heading down that way. Pinot Noir. Basically, Miles, who's a bit of a wine snob, has a problem with Merlot, and he does not want to drink Merlot. And he only wants to drink Pinot Noir. Miles won't drink Merlot, even though Merlot is easily produced and a lot of people love it. It's very fruity, a very accessible type of grape variety. Not good enough for the wine snob Miles. It's got to be Pinot Noir. And as a result of this film, sales of Merlot-dominated wines fell through the blinking floor, and the demand for Pinot Noir went through the roof.
I did notice that the demand for Pinot Noir went up more explosively than the collapse of the Merlot, but even so, it's frightening. Do you know, I cannot stand that kind of snobbery. It's like I refer to music a lot, and I love my music, mostly popular music and rock music, but I cannot bear these people who are snobbery about pop. Some of pop music is absolutely fantastic. ABBA, for example, on the Sugar Babes. These are my two great examples of brilliant pop music. And I think it's the same with wines, you know. It just depends. There's good pop music and there's bad pop music. There's good funk and there's bad funk. There's good rap and there's bad rap. There's good prog rock and there's bad prog rock. Dip in, stop being so restrictive and stop being so snobby.
It is so true. And we all know that. The ABBA's a good one. You would have got beaten up at my school for saying you liked ABBA.
Me too. And we went to nice grammar schools.
Yeah, you just couldn't say that. And whether you like the song or not is another matter. And this is the corollary with the assessment, trying to be objective about assessing our wines all. You may not like the song, but you might recognise that it's well made or well produced or has good elements.
Oh, interesting.
Sometimes it's recognising the qualities, like our Beach Boys, our Good Vibrations, you know, the title of this ep. Everyone's, Good Vibrations. Everyone knows that. Sit down and listen to that track. There is so much going on in that track. It's quite complex.
It's the craft, isn't it? If you know, you know a lot more about music than I do, being a sort of pucker musician who does actual concerts rather than caterwauls in his own basement. But you can start to appreciate the craft that goes into those harmonies in the Beach Boys songs, whether, exactly as you say, whether you like them or not. And you're saying, I think, that when it comes to wine taste, you have your own taste, but you also have your own ability to appreciate something that might not necessarily be something to your taste. I think we've hit on quite a useful analogy, which probably has been made before about 10 million times, I'd imagine.
I suspect it's not original, but hey, I'm feeling quite good just at the moment. Let's taste our Pinot Noir from Santa Barbara, California, 2018. All from the Wine Society, of course, these wines. This one's £13.95. If that sounds a lot of money, that's not a great deal of money for a Pinot Noir, particularly from California. Now, impressions, please. Nose, followed by palate.
I love the smell of this baby. I've got a feeling it's going to be reasonably tanniny. The colour is a bit ruby.
Pinot Noir, I do know, although I can't see it, is not deep ruby. It's quite a pale grape variety. Would you say this is pale ruby or medium ruby?
Oh, yeah, no, it's quite pale, actually, when I hold it up to the light. It's funny, of course, you mentioned you can't see, and I'm not sure whether people realise that you can't see. Hello, everyone, I can't see. This is Richard. He can't see.
Haven't seen for 30 years, but it doesn't stop me having a really terrible time doing blind tasting where the first question is, what does the bloody thing look like?
I know very well. I was living with you at the time, yeah. This is pale. Yeah, pale ruby. I'm holding it up to the light now. And I love the smell. Oh, damn it. What is that smell?
It's beautiful. Well, I won't go on. Taste it all.
No, I'm not sure it is that mega tanniny, actually.
Good boy. Think of primary. Now you're tasting it. Have a sip. Look at the SAT. Red wine. If I said to you, does this remind you of strawberries and raspberries and red cherries, or is it dark and black currant and blackberry and all of that? Which one would you go for?
I was going to say red currant, red fruit.
Correct.
Oh, really?
This is classic Pinot Noir assessment, qualities, red fruit dominant, absolutely. And golly,
Yeah, red currant, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, and taste it. Oh, I know we're not comparing it with a Pinot Noir, maybe from Burgundy, which would be a good contrast, but this is California, this is America. They like the fruit very much, and the climate helps, of course. The ripeness of the fruit here, this is such ripe red fruit. Strawberries, raspberries, red currant. It's all really ripe red fruit from California here.
You know what? It really is. It really is. I was getting the currants, but there's the berry as well. There's strawberry. Is there cherry? I think there is, I think I can just about, squeeze out a cherry.
Lovely ripe red fruit, basically. Oh, I can just get a whiff of something smoky on this. It's very subtle. I'm not expecting you to pick it up, because you haven't tasted and assessed as much wine as me, obviously. Just suggests to me that this wine may have seen a touch of oak. So I think there's a little bit of secondary going on here, as well as the primary. Am I getting anything tertiary? This is a 2018. It's a youngish, 3-year-old wine. It's absolutely lovely, but its hallmark is it's California Dreaming. Sorry, that was another. That wasn't the Beach Boys, was it? California Dreaming, but that was the Mamas and the Papas, I think.
It was the Mamas and the Papas. Equally good 5-part harmonies.
Yeah, wonderful. I love those tracks. This is really shouting out. This is summer. This is red fruit. This is happy.
Oh, yeah.
It's gorgeous, isn't it?
Yeah, I just bought myself another glass. There's a massive hit, a lovely plume, if you like, of the red fruit you're talking about. I haven't got the smokiness yet.
Very subtle. And again, I only got a whiff of it on the nose. I think I just got a whiff of it on the nose. I think I'm tasting any oak on the palate. But so just to summarize, this is interesting. This wine is dry, okay? There's a tiny suggestion of sugar because the fruit is so ripe. Yeah, it gives you a perception of sweetness, but the wine is leaving your mouth as a dry wine. There may be a tiny bit of residual sugar, but you can still be a dry wine even with a tiny amount of residual sugar. Let's not go into the complexities of that. The acidity is high.
My mouth would agree with you. It's I'm watering up beautifully.
Really, really, yeah. Bit of a almost waterfall time. So it's dry with high acidity. As it's a red wine, we've got to talk tannins. Your supposition was you thought the tannins would be high, but I was so pleased. As soon as you tasted it, you went, oh no, they're low, and you're spot on. The tannins are low. Pinot Noir is a low tannin variety, would be medium at tops, but you correctly assess this wine. The tannin, they're there. I've got a tiny little bit of coating of the gums, a little bit on the teeth, but tannins are low. What about the alcohol and the body?
I think this is quite boozy. Yeah, I do.
Spot on, well detected. It's 13.9, and the reason it's 13.9 is that I'm not suggesting that the producers are pulling the wool over our eyes, but 14 is high territory. And it's quite interesting how many wines you find that are 13.9, because I think they want this wine to be medium, and I think it's right on the border of high alcohol, but there is more weight than the two whites. So, and you can I'm not getting a burn, but it's a tiny little bit of heat.
Yes,
at the back. You're getting a tiny bit of heat, a little bit of warmth.
Yes,
I'd say warmth rather than heat.
Better.
Yeah. Body is... It's not full-bodied, but it's nice and ripe and medium. It's kind of on the higher end of medium-bodied, I'd say. And the finish,
Yeah, I was thinking about the finish, and then I forgot what I thought about it, so I'm going to try it again. I think I thought it was lengthy, but I'm now going to say average because it's faded away by now, and I just had a tiny little sip.
Lovely finish assessment, And
thank you.
And it is absolutely medium. You're absolutely spot on. I'm still tasting a little bit of something else, but the actual fruit, remember we talked about this in a previous ep. It's a finish, a long finish or a medium finish, but is it a good medium finish or a good long finish? This is all about the fruit, and the fruit is there for a bit, and it dies, I'd say, after about 15 seconds, something like that. So it's not short.
Yeah.
And it's not long.
Yeah, and my assessment, do you know, have you noticed I'm more confident I'm getting? My assessment is this. I'm just like, I'm going to be one of those balls in a restaurant who's overweight and suffering from gout, but is going to have his say about the wine. And I'm saying this is a decent finish, and it's one that it seems to sort of fade away consistently, so you don't have a different flavour in the finish. You have the same flavour in the finish, but sort of... just fading away at a nice pace. Because in some of the other wines, I've had a finish which is different and sometimes not quite as pleasant. But this one is a consistent finish that kind of fades away.
You've just really accurately described this wine. Well done.
Yeah, very kind. I quite enjoyed that. And there was a familiarity about it as well, which was nice. So I've obviously tasted, I've tasted the odd Pinot Noir in the past, and I would confidently order it now, knowing what I was going to get. Hurrah, another tick.
Let's look at our fourth wine. This is the Wine Society's Rioja Reserva, and they tell us in the notes that this comes from the Rioja Alta region, which is a good thing. That's a good area of Rioja. It's quite a large area, Rioja. Wines can be variable. They can be very simple and kind of sort of good, average, acceptable to good quality, right through to the super duper ones. Let's look at this wine. This is
But before we do, you have to answer one question, which is Reserva.
See?
What does that mean?
Yeah, well done. I was going to come to that, but you got there first, so keen. Reserva is an indication of the aging of the wine and how much aging the wine has had before it is released. And so, without going through all the Rioja classifications, because that would be a bit dull, the word Reserva just tells you that the wine has been aged for a minimum of 3 years. So, it's an age indication. And so, does age mean quality? What do you think? Is it better quality if it's older?
It depends, Rich.
Oh, you can't say that. You drive me crazy.
I know all your tricks.
Yeah, it does depend, of course. It just tells you, a bit like appellation contrôlée, tells you that a wine's definitely come from this place. Doesn't tell you that the wine is great quality. Might be, might not be.
Well, you know, the appellation contrôlée, and of course the equivalent in Spanish, Rich, is an indication of authenticity, not an indication of quality. I thank you.
Goodness me. Who's running this show? You or me? Flippin' heck. Okay.
The student becomes the master. I think I've got quite a long way before that happens, but I'm learning.
Good boy, you certainly are. So good. That's it. So this Rioja Reserva, I have to say, generally does indicate quality a bit, because you would only really, if a producer was worth his or her salts, they would only produce a Reserva with the aging that's required in a really good vintage. Because if you put fruit that's not particularly ripe or not great because the weather hasn't been great, the qualities of the fruit will have faded by the time the consumer has it. You need, I've said this before, but to have really great wines, you've got to have fantastic fruit, and that comes from the fantastic viticulture that we discussed last week. So optimal ripening of the fruit combined with things like acidity, a bit of winemaking, maybe some barrel contact, some wood. Wood is important in Rioja, unquestionably. This is a classic old school Reserva Rioja, and I want you to tell me about it.
It's pale red. It's very similar to the Pinot Noir. If I had a gun to my head, I'd say it's a little bit darker.
Okay.
I'm spinning it round in my glass.
Is it definitely red? Is it not going a bit garnety, a bit kind of pillar box red at the edges? Is it still that nice ruby colour?
Ruby and a bit pillar box, I would say.
On the nose, what are you noticing?
Yeah. Just like I said when I first snipped it earlier on. Oh, damn it. There's something there which is really distinctive, but I cannot for the life of me find the word.
Look at the SAT, might help you. Look at secondary and tertiary descriptors on the SAT for red wines, and that may give you a few clues.
Oh, what the hell? Oh, hang on. Oh, damn, it's gone again. There was something that it absolutely smelt of, and it's gone. This is frustrating now.
That's all right. Don't worry. Taste it.
Oh, what is it? This is driving me nuts. Is it woody? Yeah. Is it oaky? I think there might be something oaky going on.
You are picking up oak, absolutely.
Oh, right.
But let's look at it systematically. This is the systematic approach to tasting wine,
which I claim to enjoy, so let's go by it.
Let's stick to the rules, young Oliver. Primary, secondary and tertiary. Primary, are there flavours, and we're on to the palate now, fruit, red fruit or black fruit? Or both. Can be both, doesn't have to be one or t'other.
Oh dear, this is so difficult. I'm going to have another taste, but I'm not getting stressed.
Don't get stressed
of it, because this is supposed to be enjoyable.
Absolutely, and people are thinking, guys, what grape variety is that? Because Rioja is a region, not a grape variety, very much dominated by the signature grape of Spain and a Rioja Tempranillo. If I had to put a gun to your head, Ol, and say, is it more strawberry or is it more blackcurrant? What would you say?
Black. I'd go black.
Excellent. I'll ask you one more time. Oh, if I had to say strawberry, red fruits more than black fruits, what do you think it would be?
I guess red. I guess I've got to go red.
It's difficult. I honestly could not do, even at level 3, I was struggling to do this, and maybe even at diploma level 4. Actually, I think there's a bit of both, which is going to annoy you. But
no, do you know what? It doesn't annoy me, because I thought you were going to get me to answer both and then cut it in the edit in the way you wanted to. So I am not at all cross because I couldn't differentiate. I just couldn't. So actually, that's a good answer.
Absolutely. The main thing that's jumping out for me, and I know the properties of the grape variety, which leads me a bit, but I think there's quite a strong ripe strawberry fruit going on here. But I'm also getting some kind of red plum and black plum, plummy texture as well. So I think it's crossing over between red fruit and black fruit. Absolutely.
Plum I can go for. Strawberry, I really can't. I can't get it. Plum, it's almost like the plum's dominating, but plum, I can taste it right now in the finish. I think my big problem, Rich, is when it becomes so many flavours going on at one time, it's very, very difficult to differentiate.
It is. And this is it. It's so easy to feel overstimulated when there's a lot of stuff going on. I find this being blind all. Everyone assumes I've got better hearing or better other senses.
Oh, I know that infuriates you. Yeah.
It does drive me a bit crazy.
Oh, right. So you must be able to feel things with your fingers really well.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, exactly. So although my other senses I don't think are better, although you can develop your senses, plasticity, neurologists call it, don't they? Well, you can develop your palate. You can definitely learn to be a better taster of wine. And so there's plasticity there, and you can develop your sense of touch. Otherwise, people who become blind would never learn Braille because it's so impossible at the beginning, and it gets slightly easier, but I'm still rubbish at it. But I hear too much sometimes because brain's not having to filter out visual stimuli, so I guess I'm getting same basic hearing as anyone else, but the brain's just got more auditory stimuli going on because it's not having to filter out visual stimuli. That's the kind of thing that can happen.
Using the music analogy, right? If I listen to a band now, because I've listened to so much music, particularly live music, I'm picking out the bass line so easily. I'm picking out the rhythm, I'm picking out the lead, I'm picking out the snare, the bass, all the drums, the hi-hat, the cymbal. It becomes much more easy the more you do it. Is my hearing getting better? Not really. My brain is getting better at understanding the stimulus. And I remember the two things that got you annoyed when you lost your sight, apart from the fact that it was an awful tragedy. One was, so at least you'll be able to hear better, and then you'd probably try and punch the person. And the other was, my mate Steve is blind. You should meet him. As if, well, why? So it's like saying, I've got a mate who's ginger. You two should get together and have a pint. Well, no.
Yeah,
my friend's tall as well. You're both about 6'4". You should get together.
Have a 6'4" evening.
Have a massively outsized conversation. Those are the two things that got you.
You're spot on. They absolutely did.
Before I go on, can I just say cheese and/or cream cheese?
You can.
There, I've said it.
Any particular reason?
I'm getting hungry. No, there was something in this wine that made me think of cheese or cream cheese.
I'll tell you what,
I'm going to try it again.
Well, dual, and I'm going to jump in now. Red and black fruit for primary. Secondary, winemaking, oak. You mentioned oak. Absolutely, there's oak. It's American oak. Sorry to get a bit granular, but there's a sweetness both in the nose and a little bit about the taste. It's not that the wine is sweet. There's almost a coconutty aroma and flavour, which you learn to recognise when you've tasted 100 Riojas, as I probably have, and you haven't. And that comes from a specific form of oak, very traditional in traditional styles of Rioja, using American oak. Coconut, vanilla, spices, baking spice. What I'm getting all, and I'm smelling the empty glass. I only poured myself a small amount, honest gov, and I spat. My glass now smells of mushroom and something earthy and slightly leathery. It is the most gorgeous smell in my glass.
Not getting it.
Are you getting any of that at all?
Oh, wait a minute. There may be some mushroom, but it's not not mushrooms as we know it, Jim. One more go.
It's like a savoury type thing.
Wow. It's almost truffly.
Yes. You're right.
Does that make sense?
It does.
That's it.
It's more truffle than mushroom.
Do you know, Rich, this is unscripted completely, but that was the thing I was smelling earlier, and it came out as cream cheese, and I couldn't put a name on it because I'm not a great fan of truffle. I find it slightly overrated on food. It's truffle.
Well, truffle me.
It is. It's truffle.
You've truffled me. I've been truffled.
That sounds pleasant.
Oh, honestly, that was absolutely genuine. I was not leading you. You picked that. I was going in and suggested mushrooms. You weren't sure it was mushrooms. You said it was truffle. And it is a different smell. And having lived in southwest France for a year, I know what truffles smell like. My wife Liz and I made a truffle omelette and I got very excited about it, and Liz couldn't understand what all the fuss was about, and she was right. But anyway, on that occasion, truffles do smell different to mushrooms. And the point is, you've picked...
Never stop getting excited. Carry on.
You've just picked up a tertiary aroma. I think we were smelling it more than tasting it, but again, smell and taste is combined in the SAT. We've identified between us clear primary, secondary and tertiary aromas and flavours in this 6-year-old Rioja Reserva. The most expensive wine this evening, it has to be said, but it's £16.50. All I will say is there's a lot of wine in here for £16.50. You can spend a lot more money on wine and not get as much as you are.
There's an awful lot going on
here.
I'm thrilled with myself for getting that, because I know it's right, and I know you didn't lead me, you just helped me, if you like, because it was definitely the smell. Because I remember being taken by Rami, our friend, one of the 4 that we get to dinner with constantly, and he took me to this truffle specialist restaurant, tiny place in France, and it was almost comically truffle-esque in that everything on the menu came with a scraping of truffle, a dusting of truffle, maybe even a chunk of truffle, to the extent where it was like enough truffle already. But what it has left me with is there a residual reminder of what truffle tastes like, and that is it. Absolutely, 100%.
And how beautiful is that? You've sipped a beautiful Rioja Reserva. We've broken it down using WSET's SAT to try and be objective as we can about this wine. You've identified truffles, not me, and now you've just told me about a story about when you were in France with Rami at a truffle restaurant. How cool is that? And again, this goes back to what good wine can do when wine has some more complexity about it, because let's say it's got, particularly when it gets to the tertiary stage, it's reminding you of stuff, and it's about the way wine reminds us of other things and where we were and holidays and all these things. And that was, I never knew that story, but I'm really interested that you and Rami did that. You've only told me that because you've sipped a Rioja Reserva.
Yeah, what an interesting thing to say. And remember, you sometimes get a waft of a particular smell. I got a waft of a particular smell of a kind of soap we used to use at my prep school, a school I left in 1976. So I left it 45 years ago. And I got a smell of a particular kind of soap. Boom. I was straight back in that washroom, cleaning off the mug from the rugby game using a pumice stone. Where the hell have pumice stones gone? Piece of volcanic rock to scrape away dirt and skin off small children.
Yeah.
In order to scrub your hands raw. But anyway, and that's a very similar thing. So I smelt that smell, didn't know what it was. You said mushroom, and I went straight back to France and Rami and my over-truffled meal. Well done, wine.
Well, Ol, I think you've done brilliantly. I think we've had a great fun ep here. Just a quick word on quality, and then I'm going to hand it back to you and to take it away. We've assessed 4 wines. Our white wines were of good quality. Our Pinot Noir was of very good quality. And our Rioja Reserva was of outstanding quality. Without explaining why that is, I can just tell you that it relates to the factors, the features we've picked out from the SAT that helps us be objective about assessing a wine and ultimately about its quality. And above all, how amazing is it to taste lovely wine and to have memories of things we've done with our friends and have a chat about it? Isn't that what it's all about?
It's incredible. I never ever thought about using wine as a way to stimulate delightful memories, but it did for me the first time, completely unscripted as well, which is what makes it all the more special. I feel like I should give a quick summary of what I've learnt, and I've learnt a few things, many things. The first thing is that smell is every bit, if not more, important than taste when it comes to appreciating and assessing wine, in that there are sort of many more receptors, if you like, stimulating the brain. It's quite difficult, but it's fun. So I'm just in the early foothills, as opposed to Richard, who is something of an expert, obviously. And yet it's still very enjoyable saying, what is that? What is that smell? What is that taste? And how does it relate to the schema that the WSET have put together, which is incredibly useful to stimulate discussion as to how to describe a wine. The other thing that was really interesting, Rich, that I didn't appreciate before, was the fact that when you're assessing wine, you have to, if you like, put your personal taste aside and be, totally objective about what this wine is telling you. Even if it's not a wine that you would maybe choose in a restaurant, you could still appreciate the artistry, if you like, that's gone into making it, and the tastes and the smells that come out of that particular wine. I never really thought about that as something that was worthy, if you like, but it absolutely is. Also, a little bit like Socrates, the only thing that I do know for certain is that I know very little. I'm pressying slightly, but that's kind of what he said. But that doesn't mean I'm not enjoying myself, because it's an awesome journey, actually. And that truffle identification has made my week.
It's all about good vibrations. It really is. It's about vibes, isn't it?
It is, and vibes by their very nature are difficult to describe. So I'm tasting something which reminds me of, and the word just really doesn't fall out of my tongue, because actually the last wine it reminded me of an evening with Rami and our partners in France, and there's no real adjective to describe that feeling. But it just reminds me of the French culture and the fact that they...
It's good. It's a good vibration feeling. You feel good.
I thought you'd just taken leave of your senses. And of course, that's what wine's all about. It is about feeling good, just not from an alcoholic hit, but from a sensual experience, as you described it earlier in the episode. So, thank you very much. What's coming next?
We're going to be exploring rosé and sparkling wine. Details will be on the website, but you definitely need to get hold of a Tavel rosé from the Southern Rhone, and we're going to be tasting some English sparkling wine from Nyetimber that is about the same price as champagne. Flippin' heck, it better be good.
And it's English.
Turn up next week.
Well, I think there's no other better way to end an episode than that. Richard, this one has been absolutely fabulous. I've learnt a lot. I've gone from a really rather anxious taster to one with a lot more confidence. Thank you for helping me on the journey, and see you next week.